They must have given him some good drugs because he's over here like what the fuck are you talking about right now? Down in Miami, the beach don't stop, and everybody's taking a shot. Hello and welcome to my channel, and my name is Sajni, and this is where I talk about whatever crazy shit that I want to talk about. And in today's video, I'm going to be starting a series where I review all of Dance Moms Miami because they're absolutely fucking unhinged. Like, absolutely insane. Let's just get into it because it's going to be a long video. I do want to say, please make sure that you are subscribed to keep up with the series. Make sure that you're liking, commenting, and sharing if you care. And yeah, let's just get into it. So I remember watching the show as a kid, and I remember not liking a lot of the things that the other moms have said. They used to say some really hateful and really mean stuff about other kids, which is not really what you see in the OG Dance Moms. They're usually protecting their kids and other kids. But in Dance Moms Miami, everybody's throwing everybody under the bus. Like, they're absolutely wild. I also think that they probably watched the OG Dance Moms and they thought there was a certain persona or a certain way they have to be. I think they were trying to keep up with an expectation they set in their heads. I do remember before it came out, I was really excited because I absolutely loved Dance Moms as a kid. So I thought it was going to be like a franchise, like Real Housewives. And so I thought it was, going to be Miami, LA, maybe New York. Like, I thought it was going to turn into that, but they only got one season. I couldn't find why they canceled Dance Moms Miami. I have to assume it was the ratings. I will touch on the ratings on each episode. So, yeah. I do think the ratings were kind of hindered by the mentality that nothing will be better than the original that our society has. So people probably watched it or probably saw the promo and were like, I'm not going to support it because I support the original OG Dance Moms, which to each its own. So the first episode is called Get Fierce with an exclamation point. Have to point that out. This episode had a 7.4 out of 10 ratings on IMDb, which is kind of good, but it was probably the first episode and people were excited, so I think the ratings go down from there. So Dance Moms Miami is centered around one dance studio similar to the original Dance Moms. It's Star's Dance Studio in Miami, and in the very top of the episode we are introduced to the owners and the dance instructors of the studio. We have Victor Smalley and Angel Arnis. And they keep stating, and it's a running theme throughout this entire season, that they are not raising dancers, they are raising stars. Honestly, in my opinion, I think it's a true statement. We have seen other dancers in the community. For example, we have Mia Diaz. She was up there with Sophia Lucia in the dance world back in the day, and she comes from Star's Dance Studio. We also have Brady in season 8 of the original Dance Moms. He was fantastic. He was the Maddie of the ALDC for season 8. So I do think they have some heavy hitters coming out of that dance studio. And I think they can say that they're raising stars because in the dance community, they have produced stars. In this interview where we meet the owners and the dance instructors, they immediately paint the moms as crazy to kind of build up this hype around it. And they say right off the bat, if they didn't have such amazing kids, they would not have put up with the moms, which obviously that's any type of organized sports. I know, be a coach. The next part of the episode, we see two new people walk in. We have Sammy and her mother, Abby. We cut to a scene of their home. And one thing that does stick out is that we actually meet Sammy's dad, Larry, and he immediately comes off as aggressive. Now, I do want to say that we don't know why he is agitated or irritated in what's being done or what's being said. I mean, people are filming a TV show in their house. He does state that he's annoyed that Sammy's life is so consumed by dance and he doesn't get to spend time with his child. He literally says, you guys only see me as a bill payer, which is kind of sad. This is where I say these moms are just cringy. So Abby starts to brag while she's taking Sammy to practice and stating that they're the best, they're the prettiest, they have money, and people are just jealous of that. Like, Okay. And then we cut to a confessional of another mom who hasn't been introduced yet. Her name is Debbie. She becomes a very main point in this episode. Debbie says that even though that Sammy and Abby are new to the studio, they are not new to Debbie. And Sammy used to bully Debbie's daughter, Hannah. I know it sounds confusing now, but once we introduce Debbie and Hannah, it will kind of start making more sense. And I totally believe that Sammy probably bullied Hannah just by the way that Abby is speaking about her and her kid and how she's raising her kid. It looks like poor parenting. Abby does win some parenting points back later on when we get to it. But this just seems like poor parenting. You know, we're the best. Everybody's jealous of us. We have money. When you raise your kid with that mentality, yeah, they're going to bully other people. Then we're introduced to Victor's mom, Myra, and she is the receptionist slash studio manager, and she kind of is the control center who keeps everything going, scheduling, costumes. Then we cut into the dance studio, and we are introduced to the list. Now, in my opinion, the list is just a great value version of the original Dance Moms pyramid. Apparently this is a way for Angel and Victor to rank the dancers based on their performances. I think this is bullshit. And you'll see why I think it's bullshit. And in my opinion, I think obviously the producers of the show wanted to continue up with that hierarchy of dancers. Same thing what we see with the original Dance Moms. And you can tell that this set of Dance Moms are not used to this type of thing happening because they're all like smiling really awkwardly, like freaking out because they don't know what's going to be said about their child. I do want to note each time a child is shown on the list or revealed their placement on the list, those kids look at their parents and they look terrified, each and every one of them. Like every time a name is revealed, they cut and the kid's like freaking out. At the very bottom of the list, we have Hannah. Hannah's at the bottom of the list because she needs to improve her technique. If you're 21 and up, please take a shot every time I say the word technique in this series because they say that word a lot. And then they tell Debbie that Hannah needs to take more ballet and technique privates. Taking a shot of Snapple. Moving up the list in fourth place, we have Lucas. This is the same Lucas who ends up going to Candy Apples later down the line in the original Dance Moms. And they tell Lucas that he's fourth on the list because he needs to do more than flexibility tricks. Cute is only going to take him so far. Now, in my humble opinion, this is the same tactic that Abby Lee Miller uses in the original Dance Moms. I think this is an excuse to keep Lucas lower, just for the storyline to make sense. I also think you are the dance teacher. He is only going to do what you give him. So if you're giving him cutesy, flexible stuff, like kind of like Mackenzie, they're going to do it. You can't tell him cute's only going to take you so far. You need to do more than tricks. Okay, then give him more than tricks. That's my tiny little tangent because I go on a couple, so I can't make this one too long. And his mother is pissed because she's like, he won 2 national titles last year. Why is he fourth on the list? Which, another thing is, I think the moms of this franchise take the list way too seriously, way too seriously. The OG Dance Moms, they said so many times they didn't care. They just didn't like their child being berated and bullied during Pyramid, but they didn't care about the placements. And this is when we cut and we get to meet Bridget and Lucas. His mother states that he is also the best on the team. I'm going to come back to this later. Lucas is 9 years old. He is the only boy on the competition team. His mother states that he dances 25 to 30 hours a week, which is absolutely fucking insane. That is almost as much as a full-time job. You also have to take account when he goes to school. Let's say he's going to a regular public school, and he's going to school for 7 hours, and then he comes home and goes right to dance all day. It's like, whoa. It's a lot for a 9-year-old. They also bring up that stereotype that boys only win because they're boys and they want the boys to keep dancing, which Abby Lee Miller says all the time when Kathy brings in a group of boy dancers. And Bridget goes on to say that the other mothers think she's a bitch, but, you know, it gets lonely on top. Which is really funny. Okay, well, maybe it won't be, first of all, according to every single parent on this team, everybody's on top. Everybody's the best. So, first of all, I know it's not lonely on top because all of y'all think the same thing. Second of all, maybe if you stop being a bitch, you would have some friends. You said it, not me. At the list, we have Kimmy because she can't remember choreography and that's why she's third, which also is why I'm kind of confused on the whole, like, based on performances, because if Kimmy can't remember choreography, wouldn't she be lower than Lucas? I digress. Moving up again, we have Sammy, which means that Sammy is second on the list, which also doesn't make sense. This is a brand new dancer that just walked into your studio 5 minutes ago, and she's second on the list. They state that putting her as second is a risk, and now she needs to prove herself. It wouldn't be a risk if it was fair, but it's not. And at the very top of the list, number 1, we have Jessie. Jessie says that she believes that she should be on the top because she has earned her stripes, and she also confirms that she is the best dancer on the team. And her mother does agree with these statements. Also, in this moment when Jessie is revealed to be number 1, Jessie and her mother Susan, which we'll get into later, they both look like they've been crying, so I wonder what that was all about. Then we go into the assignments. They're going to Hollywood Vibe in South Florida, so it's going to be in their backyard. And Jessie has a solo. Kimmy and Lucas have a duet. I think Sammy has a solo. I think it just wasn't aired. And I will get into the reasoning why I think she had a solo. All Angel states is that Sammy needs to prove herself, but he doesn't flat out say that she has a solo. But later on in the episode, she's seen in a solo costume. That's why I think so, and I'll get into other reasons why I think she had a solo. And the group number is going to be a jazz funk routine. It doesn't have a name, so yeah. And this is just a little funny, like, tidbit, but during rehearsal, Angel and Victor are rehearsing with the children, obviously, and back in the viewing room with the moms, Abby asks everybody, what do I need to know about Victor and Angel? Debbie continues to state that they're super strict and, you know, you can't get away with the same stuff you're getting away with at the other studio. Then randomly, I don't know how it got to this point. There must have been something said when it cut to this point, but Abby is just going on and on and on and on about all of these titles that Sammy has won. Moms are just like, who gives a fuck? We all think our kids are the best, so we don't care what your kid did. Says that she's been in the top 10 since she was 6 years old. I'm sure all of them have. This is when we're introduced to Hannah and Debbie. Debbie states that Hannah wasn't born with natural flexibility, but her passion to learn and to dance is really what shines through. Debbie states that she is way more competitive than Hannah, and Debbie's waiting for the day that Hannah gets to beat Sammy, which honestly, this is the second to most wholesome interview we have, so at least she didn't say her child was the best. Back in the viewing room, Debbie starts to complain that she's upset that Hannah's the only one that doesn't have like a special dance this week, which is fair. I personally would not want my child to be singled out in a negative way, and I feel like only leaving Hannah out and making her only do the group dance is really hurtful. My humble opinion, I think this was probably done to Debbie because they wanted a reaction out of her. And this is where I also think that Sammy most likely had a solo, because Debbie is going on and on and on and on about how she feels disrespected because Hannah doesn't have a solo. But you would think Abby would be like, oh, you shouldn't feel this way because Sammy also doesn't have a solo. Or, you know what, I feel upset that Sammy doesn't have a solo either. But she doesn't say anything because she's probably content that her child has a solo. Debbie pulls Victor and Myra to the side. She expresses her frustrations to Victor and how she's hurt by the whole situation. Victor states, well, Hannah needs to improve, and before you sit here and tell me she's already creme de la creme. Debbie cuts him off and says, I didn't say that. I just feel hurt that she's the only one that's not doing anything special. Victor states he's making up for it by putting her in the highlight of the routine and putting her center of the routine. Just, in my opinion, a really shitty response, because at the end of the day, dance is an extracurricular activity, and you excluding a single child is just like not right. They're children at the end of the day. Debbie states that there's nothing that Victor can do to make the situation right. So he storms off and says, you know, then why am I talking to you? And he turns back to her and says, this won't be the first or last. Which, yeah, you're filming a reality TV show. This is not going to be the first or last argument. The first and last time you guys argue about something stupid like this. And now we are rehearsing Jesse's solo. It's called Black Sun, and it's in contemporary piece. So then we meet Susan and Jesse. I want to point out the fact that Jesse is 14 years old, and everybody else on the team are, you know, is 9, 10, or 9, 11, and 12. So I feel like throughout this entire season, Jesse and Susan really tried to harp on the fact that Jesse is the best, which I would hope you're better than a 9-year-old. You saying you're the best on the team does not mean anything to anybody. You are 14. Relax. And I also want to point out that Susan is sobbing throughout this confessional, which I'm going to play another drinking game if you're 21 and up. Every time Susan cries, take a shot. You will be destroyed by the end of this just first episode. I don't know if Susan's going through menopause, but I've never seen somebody cry so much throughout a show. Like, even, like, Pretty Little Liars, they were not crying this much, like, at the whole series. And Jessie states that her mother lives through her dancing. We then meet Jessie's grandmother, Bertha, and she actually states that Bertha was a dancer for the National Ballet of Colombia. Susan states that she danced very briefly as a child, but her mother couldn't really take her to dance classes because she was worried about her own, you know, dance career. Even Bertha looks at Susan and she goes, "Why are you crying? Like, why are you crying?" And honestly, this is just a sad backstory for the ultimate stage mom. Like, this is literally what you think. And apparently this is why Susan is so competitive when it comes to Jessie. Even when Jessie is exhausted, she still makes her practice. Back to Jessie's practice in the studio. Susan is concerned about how much time Jessie has to learn and perform the solo. I'm going to assume that this Dance Moms Miami cast saw the original OG Dance Moms and are kind of familiar with the format of learning a new dance every week. I don't know why Susan thought that she would be the exception and why she's freaking out over it. You signed up for it. I do understand that most studios, they will learn a dance for months and then compete it, but in the Dance Moms format, that's just not a thing. You learn the dance the week of and you go and perform it. So we need to stop freaking out because you knew what you signed your kid up for. And she's 14. Like, the 9-year-olds are doing it just fine, then your 14-year-old can do it just fine. Then we see Lucas and Kimmy. They're shown doing their tango duet. And Angel says the two have to connect like they're a real couple, even though they're both 9. And in my opinion, Kimmy is so unintentionally funny. Like, she just, like, with her little Miami accent, she's like, well, I hope I can remember this one. Everybody else is like, I'm the best. And she's like, hey, I'm just praying I can remember what I'm doing out there. Like, it's really refreshing. And Bridget, Debbie, and Annie are all watching this rehearsal and they think it's cute and they like it. This is when we're introduced to Kimmy and Annie. Kimmy is also 9 years old, like I said before. And Kimmy states that she dances because it inspires her and she feels free when she dances, which also is such a refreshing response. She doesn't state that I'm the best out of everybody. She's like, I just like to do it. Like I said, this is an extracurricular activity for them. And that's how Kimmy views it as. Kimmy is more of an adult than the adults on the show. Add on to that, Kimmy gets herself up at 4 a.m. every morning. She gets herself up. Her mom doesn't wake her up. She gets herself up at 4 a.m. every morning, finishes whatever homework she needs to do, gets herself ready, goes to school, comes home, gets ready, goes to dance, repeat it. Like, that's an adult. I can't even do that. I can barely get up and get to my 9 to 5. And Annie considers Kimmy to be a perfectionist because, you know, Annie says to herself, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Annie thinks Kimmy is a little OCD and she needs to have everything perfect, which Yeah, some kids are like that. And he states that she is the peacemaker among all of the moms, which is also really refreshing. I can already tell they're going to be my favorite too, because like Kimmy is just so unironically funny. And Ani's just here for a good time, not a long time. She's here to collect a check and leave. Back in the rehearsal, Kimmy and Lucas are still trying to learn their tango. Then Victor and Angel include this very difficult trick where Kimmy has to flip over the back of Lucas, which I'll insert a clip here. They attempt the trick for the first or second time, and Kimmy falls on her head, which Kimmy is fine. But Angel gets irritated that these kids couldn't get something right on the first try and sends them outside, which they're 9 flipping over each other. Like, you can give them a second to try to learn it. They just did it for the first time and you're flipping out, but I digress. He says they have no chemistry and that it doesn't look like a tango from Spain. It looks like they're doing country dancing in Alaska. It's the first I've ever heard anything like that. Outside, Lucas begins to tear up and Victor gives him a pep talk and Kimmy is trying to cheer him up. He's just like flustered because he just dropped Kimmy on her head. It feels like really bad, which I feel bad. You know, he feels guilty for dropping his friend, but Kimmy's fine and she tries to cheer him up too. So the next day in rehearsal, the moms are watching the dance and Debbie says, you know, I think the dance looks good. Susan loses her mind, starts flipping shit, and Susan thinks the kids are underprepared, which once again, you learn a new dance every week. This is where I kind of like Abby. Abby states that Susan is all over Jessie about work, 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 and practicing, but she just needs to relax and take a Valium. Which is so stupid. Susan storms out of the viewing room and she grabs Jessie and she tells Jessie, we need to practice, like, right now. And you can just tell by looking at Jessie, she is red, she's sweaty, she's chugging a bottle of water. She obviously just got out of rehearsal. So she's literally just like taking a moment to collect herself and, you know, breathe. And she just so happened to be sitting with Victor when Susan comes and tells her that we need to go outside and practice your solo. Once Susan pulls Jessie for a private, Victor goes and tells Angel what he just witnessed. Angel tells Susan that it's not fair that when he finally gets to rehearse with Jessie for her solo, she's going to be burnt out and tired because you already took all of her energy. Which was, honestly, this argument was probably the most mature thing I've heard on either Dance Moms Miami or the original Dance Moms. It was just so mature. Then Susan uses the excuse that Jessie's on top of the list because she works. That's her response. Angel explains again that he can't work with Jessie because Jessie is too tired because you pulled her in for a random private. He explains to her that you're not a dance teacher and let me do my job. This is what you're paying me for. The next day is the competition day. Angel goes to Victor and he is extremely sick. Victor says, you know, I just threw up, I don't feel good. But Victor says he's going to the competition anyways, which me personally, I am a coach of 30 little girls. And if I have anything contagious like a stomach bug, I don't go to practices sick because I don't want to risk the possibility of spreading it. And then the practice afterwards, when I'm feeling better, half the team is out because they're sick. That's just me. And then as they're all loading up on the bus, Victor dramatically runs off the bus, vomits, and then runs back on the bus. Then he goes to sleep. And Susan's confessional was so fucked. She says Victor is the one who stretches Jessie, who gives her a pep talk, who rehearses backstage with her, and he is vomiting. What are they gonna do? How is Jessie, basically insinuating how is Jessie gonna win if Victor is sick? Which honestly, you're thinking about a medal trophy over somebody's like well-being and health. Yeah. And since you wanted to play dance teacher earlier and take her for a private rehearsal, why don't you stretch her? Why don't you rehearse with her since you want to play both? Like, Susan, make up your mind. So once they get to Hollywood Vibe, Victor is passed out in a corner. Bridget feels like maybe he should go to the hospital. Myra tells Bridget that her son doesn't have a virus, he's fine, and that they should just trust her because that's his mom. Myra just states he needs some rest. The conversation randomly escalates, which is a common theme in this show, that they'll just randomly jump cut to like a screaming match and like, where the fuck did this come from? So Bridget and Myra start to argue. They call each other rude and tell each other to go, like petty, stupid argument. Susan runs up in Bridget's face, and she says, you need to mind your business, which pot calling the kettle black, like, you're getting up in their business, like, in their argument. So maybe you should mind your business too and worry about your daughter. Angel comes in with a wheelchair, gets Victor, and they escort him to the hospital, finally. Then out of nowhere, with no context, Susan and Debbie start to go at it, calling each other psychos. It was super random. Then Susan cries, which, take a shot. Susan cries because she feels that the arguing is going to affect Jessie's solo. Jessie performs her solo Black Sun. In my opinion, I feel like they could have challenged her more on the choreography. She is a beautiful dancer, but give her more. She did end up falling out of one of her turns as well. I thought it was a very nice performance. Jessie feels like she could have done better, but I feel like everybody has that mentality where we can all do better. Victor then returns from the hospital, which quickest fucking hospital visit I've ever seen in my entire life. They must have given him some good drugs because he's over here like, what the fuck are you talking about right now? Victor comes back into the dressing room after going to the hospital. This is when Sammy is seen in a solo costume. Next, we have Kimmy and Lucas's tango duet, and first of all, the costumes were stunning. The choreography was so good. They looked so cute. That is probably my favorite dance of the episode, is that tango. They did such a great job. They were fantastic. After they leave the stage, Lucas thinks that, they didn't do well, which I have to disagree. There was one moment where Kimmy was literally off by maybe a millisecond, which you can play it off like a ripple. And Kimmy's like, I don't think it was that big of a deal. That's literally what Kimmy said. She's like, and? It's not that big of a deal. Kimmy does not give a fuck. It's so funny. Group dance performs and it was fine. It wasn't anything, spectacular. I do think that their group dance choreography every week is kind of boring and it's kind of the same thing. Their group dances are fine to me. And let's get into awards. Jessie gets second place. Susan starts to cry, take a shot, and blames the other moms for fighting in front of her daughter. Lucas and Kimmy got first in the duet. The group got first place. Usually, I know this as a coach, you select one person to go up and accept the award on the behalf of the team. So this person who accepted the award was Hannah, I guess because she didn't have any other dances to do this week. They let her go up and accept the first place award, which is really nice. And Hannah didn't even finish sitting down. She was holding and trying to sit down. Jessie, the 14-year-old, snatches the award out of her hand. It was literally oh, okay. If you think about it, Jessie should be in high school at this point. Maybe 8th grade, but usually a freshman in high school, you're 14. Kimmy and Lucas are in elementary school. And they are more well-behaved than her, which is all to do with the parenting. Every single parent sees Jessie snatch the award out of Hannah's hand. Victor and Angel see it. Everybody sees this whole ordeal. Even the cameras caught it. And Jessie keeps the trophy. She doesn't share it with anybody else. She puts it on her little makeup desk to flaunt it to everybody because apparently she was the only one in the group dance. Which, sis, if you really wanted a first place trophy, maybe you should have gotten first place in your solo. Not to sound like Abby Lee Miller, but you better flaunt that second place, not the first place. Not how she was doing it. And her mother doesn't correct this behavior at all, which really pisses me off. And this is when I say kudos to Debbie. She asked all of the children to wait outside the dressing room when Angel and Victor comes in. And she's actually speaking very nicely to Susan. She explains how hurtful it was to see Jessie snatch something out of Hannah's hand the way she did. Susan got extremely defensive. She started to turn the whole thing back on Debbie. She's like, everybody thinks my child is this or that. And even Victor and Angel were like, here's a video of her doing it. Here's a video. And she's like, no. And she took offense and she stormed out of the room. And that was the end of the episode. So I'm assuming at the top of the next episode, we're going to address that. There's another thing that I wanted to bring up. in relation to this episode. So Miami New Times did post a review April of 2012, and I'm assuming this is the day after the first episode of Dance Moms Miami comes out, and I just want to read some excerpts because this article is dragging the show. So it says, the cast. Oh yes, the actual moms and daughters. There's Jessie and Susan, the crazy mother and daughter duo. Kimmy with the Brady Bunch-like lisp, which is so fucked up and mean. She's fucking 9. And Annie. Hannah and Debbie. The mother could use a dance class or 10. Which is like a dig to Hannah because they're saying that Debbie doesn't know what she's talking about when she says her daughter has talent. Lucas, the only boy, of course, and Bridget. Are they scripted? Hell yeah. Angel's wardrobe. During his interviews, we see a lot of silk shirts and fedoras are all worn together. Terrible, but kind of expected for a Miami dance coach. But his style progressively got worse. Our favorite outfit of the night had to be the 579 clearance rack poncho with buttons on the side. Buttons on half. The VIP list. If you've ever caught the original Dance Moms, you know that every week Abby Lee Miller uses a pyramid to show the moms and the dancers who she feels did the best or who needs to improve. Nothing is new for Dance Moms Miami. Every week, the children will be listed from best to worst. Oh yes. This will be great for their self-esteem. The kids seem to take it well, which can only mean more layers of deep-seated self-esteem issues to unpack on the therapy couch in 20 years. Well, fuck you. You just came at Kimmy's list. Like, what the fuck? Well, yeah, maybe if they weren't having a slanderous article written about them, that wouldn't help either. This one says, Kimmy and Lucas's tango duet. This just felt wrong. We were expecting Chris Hansen to make an appearance. We keep expecting Chris Hansen to make an appearance. All and what we're you intending to do with these children after they dance for the forbidden dance of your What the fuck? We keep expecting Chris Hansen to make an appearance. All and what were you intending to do with these children after they dance the forbidden dance for your entertainment? Add a 6-pack and some candy and you've been arrested. They were dancing. The trophy grabbing. Most of the episode focused on the crazy dance moms, but the kid dancers did have their moments. After intense competition, stars won first place. But wait, they received the trophy. Veteran Jessie ripped it out of fellow veteran Hannah's hand, and drama broke out between the moms because God forbid anyone lets their own kids stick up for themselves. We know what we just wrote is pure ridiculousness. Yeah. They're making it seem like Debbie came after Jessie, which no, she tried to have a heart-to-heart with Jessie's mom, Susan, and that's how the drama ensued. And she's just saying, hey, you need to correct your kid because that's really poor sportsmanship. Like, obviously this person doesn't have kids. The word fierce. Even drag queens have cut back on this term. No, they haven't. So yeah, that article was a really, really tough review of Dance Moms Miami, but I mean, I guess everybody has their own opinion. They just had a lot of wrong opinions. But let me know what you think down below. I'm going to try to post my Dance Moms Miami reviews on Wednesdays or Tuesdays, depending on when I can get it edited and ready to go. And I just want to thank everybody watching today. Please make sure that you are subscribing, liking, and commenting. And yeah, let me know what you think. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Down in Miami, the beach don't stop.